Hey, how are you today? This is Josh Patrick, and you are Cracking the Cash Flow Code. And my guest today is Michelle Seiler Tucker, and she has a new book coming out calling the Exit Rich book. When you can find out more information about that book at www.exitrichbook.com. And we're going to talk about succession and exit planning from your business. And my first thing that I'm curious about with Michelle is, what is Exit Rich, and what do you mean by that?
Well, that's funny because this is my second book that I've come out with about selling your business, and Exit Rich. The reason I came up with that title is because unfortunately, so many business owners are exiting poor. And so many business owners are exiting poor because they don't plan their exit. They don't think about selling until a catastrophic event has occurred, whether that's internal or external. And they just don't plan their exit. The worst time to sell your business is when a catastrophic event has occurred or when you're in the middle of a pandemic. The best time to sell is when your business is doing well. So Exit Rich is all about building a sustainable, scalable, and when you're ready, sellable business so you can exit rich.
So, out of curiosity, and I always like to ask people in the exit planning world this question: what is the most important thing a business owner can do to make their business attractive to a buyer?
Well, I call it's more than just one important thing, Josh. I call it six important things, which are the six P's. Number one, you got to have people. I can't even begin to tell you how many business owners want to sell their business, but they don't have a team in place. They don't have a management team in place. The business is 1,000% dependent upon them. And if we pull that owner out of the business, there's not much of a business. And I've seen this happen with even multi-million-dollar companies where the owner is in everything and the business can't really function without the owner. So number one is people. The other most important thing when you're selling a business is to make sure you're in the right industry. Right now, restaurants are not selling. Hospitality is not selling. So you have to ask yourself, is your industry thriving or is your industry dying? So you have to be in the right industry. You have to have the right product. Number three,
Yeah, but you don't get to. I mean, you have your industry. You're stuck with the industry. You can't change it.
well, you can't change the industry, but there's things that you can do to pivot. There's things that restaurants can do, and they're doing them right now, where restaurants are creating experiences online, where they're selling experiences where they'll have the chef send you a gourmet box of food, and you can do cooking with the chef, or you can do wine and tasting experiences. I mean, there's restaurants in New Orleans doing this right now. So no matter what industry you're in, if your industry is dying because of the pandemic, you need to pivot, you need to get creative, and you need to throw the box away and figure out a different way to connect with your clients. You need to ask yourself, what business are you in and what business should you be in?
Okay. My answer to that is the most important thing a business owner can do is they can become operationally irrelevant in their business. And if they don't have a sellable business.
Yep. Which is what I said with people.
Yeah.
We just said it differently.
Yeah. Selling for an outrageous price. How do you go about doing that?
So the only way to sell for an outrageous price is to have a company that's going to be attractive to a lot of buyers. We have probably over 25,000 buyers that we work with. Now, we don't work with them every single day. We have 25,000 buyers in our database. There are 5 different types of buyers. And what we find is when we have businesses that have an EBITDA of over $1 million or over $2 million, we have more buyers for those type of businesses than any other type. There are more buyers for good businesses than there are good businesses to buy. So we can easily bring 500, 600, 700 buyers to the table. What we look at is, what are those synergies? What is a buyer willing to pay more for? Are they willing to pay more for contracts? Yes, as long as those contracts are transferable. Are they willing to pay more for patents? Are they willing to pay more for trademark? Are they willing to pay more for a certain contract, a certain customer relationship that they can't get into right now? And that would be yes. So we look for buyers that are willing to outbid others, to pay for certain synergies, and create a bidding war. That's how we can sometimes get our clients a higher price.
Yeah. So when you say a bidding war, are you talking about using what's called a structured auction?
No, we're not doing a structured auction. We just, like I said, sold a manufacturing company that appraised in the $9 million range. We have 550 buyers for this particular business. It was an oil manufacturing. They had a few patents, and they had 60% of their business tied up in BP. We found a strategic that was in a similar business, similar product, but different, but had been trying to get into BP for years and never could get in. They wanted that BP relationship because they were confident that once they got into BP, that they would be able to sell their products and services to BP as well.
Okay, that's an unusual situation, but most businesses I've run across don't have, there might be some strategic buyers hanging around. And a strategic buyer, for those who don't know, is somebody who can buy your business and make a bunch of your overhead disappear overnight. Typically, it's a competitor.
Competitor strategic.
Yes. So that's an unusual situation in my experience. Most of the time, a business will have 3 or 4 or 5 people interested. What would prevent you from doing an auction for that?
Nothing
a structured
really
auction, again, is where you get a bunch of buyers who are bidding against each other for the business.
Yeah. So you're asking me what would prevent me from doing a structured auction?
Yeah.
Nothing would prevent me from that. I think the reason that we're able to get so many buyers than other M&A advisors, or probably what you've seen in your experience, is that I've been in business over 20 years, and we have so many buyers that we work with. We work with over 3,000 private equity groups. And throughout the years, we've developed these relationships with buyers. Like I have a sophisticated serial entrepreneurial who pretty much gives me an LOI on, I would say, probably 20% of every listing we take. So again, we're just able to bring so many more buyers to look at a business. And again, everything's confidential. We have non-disclosures, but we're able to just get a lot more buyers than I think other advisors are.
Well, my experience is anybody who's a real player in the M&A world has the same sort of database they go into, and they bring it down to maybe 20 people who will get a look at the business, and they usually bring that down to 3 to 5 who they bring into an auction process. And that's how they tend to get better prices. But everybody has their own way of doing that. Do you consider yourself a business broker or an investment banker?
I consider myself to be a mergers and acquisitions master intermediary, which is my accolade, which is what I am, certified by M&A Source. But yeah, I consider myself to do that. But
what you just said. I'm sorry.
I'm a mergers and acquisitions master intermediary, M&A advisor.
Okay.
Is what I consider myself. Now, I don't just sell businesses, so maybe it's important for you to know this. I also buy businesses. I partner with business owners. I help business owners build to sell their business, so they will have a sellable asset.
Mm-hmm. And what do you, when you build to sell a business, what do you focus on?
I focus on the people, the team, putting in the right management team. I focus on making sure the processes are productive and efficient, designed with the customer experience in mind, that it's well documented, that we have SOPs, everybody's trained on it. I focus on IP, building our IP. I focus to make sure we have diverse client base and obviously profits.
Okay. And of those, what would you consider as the most important?
Well, obviously everybody wants profits, right? But I always say profits is never the problem. It's always a symptom of not having the right people in place, or not having the right processes, or not being in the right industry. There's so many reasons that cause a lack of profits. I think they're all important, but number one, I would say people.
Yeah, Peter Drucker always said profits are a result, not a purpose.
Correct.
Which always made sense to me. So when you say people, what do you mean by people?
Having the right people in the right seat. So many times business owners are pulled in many different directions. They are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. They're working in their business, not working on their business. So I think you have to have the right people in the right seat. You need to have a management team in place. So like you said earlier, that the business is not dependent upon the owner.
So, how do you go about figuring out who are the right people in the right seat and bringing them into the business, and also get the owner of the business to play by a set of rules and be consistent about it?
That's a challenging part. How do you do it, Josh? I mean, I partner with business owners all the time, and one of the biggest issues with partnering with business owners is getting them to change their habits and getting them to grow themselves bigger, to grow themselves bigger so that they can grow the business bigger, but to take them out of the business because they're so stuck in doing things the same old way. So that's, been my biggest challenge sometimes partnering with other owners, is just getting them to get unstuck and look at things and do things differently. And I'm sure you have that same challenge as well in consulting.
Well, we do have an issue with that, but it's the way we look at it is we ask them to understand that systems are important for their people, even though they hate them. And we also give them a pass on not following all the systems that get put in place.
Yeah. And then the other part, go ahead. I'm sorry. It's your show.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say the other problem I see is that employees, business owners, they just want to replace employees so quickly. They don't want to give them a chance. And
yeah, well, that's because business owners, as a rule, blame their people and not look at the systems, or don't look in the mirror to see what kind of problems they're causing.
right.
And I think that's a really important thing for them to do, is to understand that. And this really goes to W. Edwards Deming, who wrote his 14 points. And two of his points were, don't blame the person, blame the manager, and don't blame the person, blame the system. And if you can get an owner to look at those two things, it generally becomes an easier conversation to have.
Yeah.
The other issue is that we focus on helping the business owner realize what are the steps of becoming operationally irrelevant. And most times I find that owners, when they first hear that word, say, yes, that's what I want. And then we say, okay, great. So let's figure out how we can do that. So I have a question for you.
Then when it comes down to doing it, they don't really want to do it.
Well, that's actually not been my experience.
Okay.
I think it depends on the business owner.
Right.
And the ones, there's a reason that businesses stay small. And in my experience, the reason they stay small is because the owner has never learned how to be an effective delegator. They've tried it and they said, well, that doesn't work, so I can't do that again. So we teach them how to become great delegators, or what I call delegating ninjas. And you're really not a good delegator, in my opinion, until you are delegating to managers of managers.
I agree.
It's relatively easy to delegate the first time because now you're just having a bunch of helpers. But when you bring that first level of managers in who manage other people in your company, now you're managing managers, and that's where delegation gets hard. Or at least in our experience. So, where does recurring revenue fit into your model for selling businesses at a ridiculous price?
So I think recurring revenue is huge. We're working with a couple of e-commerce businesses right now, and whenever they have a recurring model, a membership, anything like that, it definitely adds value, because that's what buyers are looking for. Buyers are looking for a business that's sustainable, a business that has congruent revenue centers, multiple congruent revenue centers, and has reoccurring revenue. That's what every buyer wants to buy. So it definitely adds value, and it definitely brings more buyers when a business has that.
So most of the people listening to this podcast own blue collar businesses. And a lot of those blue collar businesses are construction companies. And construction companies, by their nature, are only as good as their last bid. So what kind of advice would you give a construction company about what they should do to make themselves attractive to a buyer?
So what type of construction are we talking about? Are we
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter?
Any type of construction. Nope.
Okay. Well, we're selling a construction company right now in the $40 to $60 million range, but that's probably not the listeners, right?
Well, there may be some there. I mean, we
Yeah.
have a company in town, a construction company in town that was doing $500 million, very profitable. And they ended up forming an ESOP because the ESOP price was higher than they could get in the marketplace. So they sold their business to an ESOP. But assuming your sellers don't want to do that or are not in a position to do so,
Yeah.
what kind of recommendations would you make to them so they become attractive to a buyer?
Sure. So one of the biggest issues that I see with construction companies is that they don't have teams in place. A lot of them, and it depends. I mean, a lot of them have subcontractors. The business is dependent upon that owner. The owner has the relationships with the subcontractors. The owner has a relationship with the clients. The owner's doing the bidding. The owner's pretty much wearing all the hats and doing all the work. And I would say you own a glorified job, not a company. So I would encourage them to build a business, and they should probably hire you, Josh. But I would encourage them to build a business and make sure that they build a team and have people, because no buyer wants to buy a job. The reason we're able to sell our construction company right now in between that price range that I gave you is because they have 150 employees. The owner is on his boat all the time. His family run the business. He's got good management team in place. When I say his family, I don't want to kind of give it away because it's a Louisiana company, but he has a couple of family members that help run the company. Plus, he has a great management team in place. The business definitely operates without him. He's got about $100 million of WIP, work in progress, and the company does very well because he's built an actual business. So for any industry, whether it's construction, whether it's trucking, it doesn't matter the industry. You have to build a business, and that's the biggest issue that I see with the smaller companies is they're just not building the business, and the owner is wearing all the hats.
Yeah, I would say that the vast majority of businesses don't get sold or transferred. They just close up and go away.
You're 1,000% correct. According to Steve Forbes, 8 out of 10 businesses do not sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's even true with sellable businesses. I mean, and I think if I'm not mistaken, about 50% of the businesses which are considered saleable never sell either. They go to a market and they can't get a buyer for it for a variety of reasons. One of the things we always recommend is that before you even think about selling, go through a mock due diligence exam on your own company and figure out where your weaknesses and your strengths are and what you can do to manage those weaknesses along the way if you're going to go through the process.
That's a great point. I mean, we do that with our clients. We always try to find the skeletons in the closet and bring them out. And we, point out the strengths, point out the weaknesses, try to get the owners to fix the weaknesses if they can during the process. And we always do that. We want the buyer to know what the weaknesses are and where the bodies are buried.
So, for many of the businesses you're dealing with, private equity is your logical buyer. Is that correct?
We have private equity. We work a lot with competitor strategics. We also work a lot with serial entrepreneurs as well that buy lots of businesses from us. Correct.
Well, serial entrepreneur, would you put them in sort of in the private equity bucket?
I would not put them in a private equity bucket. No. Private equity buys two ways. They buy based upon platform or they buy based upon add-on. Serial entrepreneurs, they are more EBITDA, they're industry agnostic. They're more EBITDA focused. I have one gentleman that is in trucking. He owns hospitals. He owns construction. He owns manufacturing. He just started owning retirement homes. So he's all across the map, but he's more EBITDA specific than anything, whereas private equity groups are going to look at platforms or look at add-ons.
Well, speaking of EBITDA, by the way, for those who don't know, stands for earnings before interest, taxes, and amortization, depreciation, and otherwise known as your cash flow from your business. What What kind of multiples can someone expect to get from their business? And
So
why
really,
should they be looking at EBITDA versus multiple of sales?
have you ever seen a client get a multiple of gross revenues?
Lots.
Really?
And yeah, but they're always dumb buyers that do that. Sophisticated buyers do not do multiple gross sales.
And it's
They always do
always,
multiple of cash flow.
and I don't want to offend anybody, but it's also CPAs who tell their clients that they can get a multiple, they can get 3 times their gross revenues. Like you just said it, educated buyers are not going to pay a multiple of gross revenues. A first-time buyer might, but then that's a lawsuit waiting to happen because they're going to try to sue on reps and warranties or something else. But no, it's always a multiple of EBITDA, SDE. It's never a multiple of gross revenues for sophisticated buyers, and we typically deal with sophisticated buyers. I would say, that really depends because that's kind of all over the board. It has a lot to do with how long the business has been in business, what the industry is. The higher the EBITDA, the higher the multiple. And again, it depends upon synergies because those who hold the gold makes the rules. Buyers, I have seen buyers offer a lot more money and pay a higher multiple because they want that particular synergy. They want that patent. They want that contract. They want, that team. They want something that they don't currently have, and they're willing to pay more for it. But multiples for smaller companies, it can be anywhere from 2 to 3.5. The construction company, we're at 7. We have an agriculture company that we're selling that their EBITDA is about 16 million. We're probably going to be around 7.5 for that particular company. Does that answer your question, Josh?
Well, yeah, in a sense. But what you're really saying is the higher your EBITDA, the higher the multiple.
Correct.
And
Correct.
the reason for that is the higher the EBITDA, the more stable the company is.
The more stable the company, yes. And the more the company operates, and again, what I call the 6 Ps, as outlined in Exit Rich. You got the right people in place. You got the management team in place. You're in the right industry. Industry is thriving, not dying. If it was dying, you wouldn't be having a high EBITDA. you have efficient processes. They're well documented. Everybody's trained on them. You have IP in place, proprietary. You have patrons, diversified clientele, loyal clientele, and you're making money.
Those are all good things to do. Michelle, unfortunately, we are out of time. And I'm sure some people are going to want to find your book and find you and maybe think about getting your advice about selling their company. And how would they go about doing so?
They can go to exitrichbook.com, which is right here on the screen, to purchase a book. They can also go to Seiler, and I'm going to spell that for your listeners. That's SEILER, SeilerTucker.com. That's our website.
Okay, cool. And I have 2 things I would like you to do. First of all, I'd like you to go visit our website at www.sustainablebusiness.co. And that's .co, not .com. It's one of those fancy new URLs. And there you're going to find our podcast. And when you find our podcast, I would love to have you go wherever you're listening to your podcast and leave an honest rating and review. It's really, really important for us. And the second thing is, since we're talking about having your company sale ready, I've actually written an ebook on having the sale ready company. It's the 8 steps you need to do to have a sale ready company. It's easy to get. You just go again to www.sustainablebusiness.co/sale ready, and you'll get our ebook on the 8 steps that you need to take before you get your business ready to sell and contact somebody like Michelle. So this is Josh Patrick. You're with Michelle Seiler Tucker. You're at Cracking the Cashflow Code. Thanks a lot for stopping by. I hope to see you back here really soon.